Okay, so full disclosure, I'll just give you 60 seconds on myself. So my name's Amy Radin. I actually am a recovering large corporate financial services executive who for about the last 15 years developed a real passion in the practice of innovation as a business discipline. And what I've discovered through my networking and working with a lot of startup companies to integrate to technology and driving some major digital transformations of big companies is that people are people, and people make buying decisions in very similar ways, irrespective of what sector they're in or what business they're in. And businesses across sectors aren't as different from each other as they like to think. So I'm giving myself a bit of a personal break from the big corporate world and really have just gone out into the community and wanted to do a little bit of giving back and connected with the Dodge Foundation on this topic. And I'm a New Jersey resident. I live in Millburn, if anybody is from that area. And sort of volunteered to come today and share some of what I know. So hopefully it'll be of value to you, and if not, an hour of time. But really, when I talk about, my passion is really around innovation and strategy. And innovation is one of those highly abused words in business. I'm not talking about cool stuff. I'm talking about really how do you get insight about people whose business you want, and how do you develop that into really interesting and novel ideas that help distinguish you in the market. So it's all about how do you contribute to accomplishing your business goals. And when I talk about strategy, it's not the domain of senior executives or high-ticket consultants. When I talk about strategy, it's really understanding where are you today, where are you trying to get to with your business objectives, and then how do you get there? So it's something that we can all own. And so I came across this notion of the Value Constellation in the last couple of years in some of my own work, and I'm always very intrigued by the idea of having a concrete template. I was happy to hear Josh talk about templates. All this sort of fancy language boils down to is some concrete templates that you can use in literally almost a fill-in-the-blank format to challenge your own thinking about where you're trying to get to and how you're going to get there. And incorporating that into your daily work. And the challenge really becomes for all of us as human beings is that our own deep knowledge and expertise can sometimes work against us, and it becomes very hard to see things differently. So from what Joe has described to me, this is a group that collectively and individually has quite a bit of experience in, maybe in the traditional world of journalism, newsroom, media, and just being able to see beyond that, you get trapped in your own expertise. So having frameworks is a way to force you to just get out of that box that you tend to put yourself in, and we all do it. And that's all that it is. It's a way to help you break away. And I just love this quote from, I was a lit major, so I always had to pull quotes from Proust, that the real magic of discovery lies not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So this kind of framework helps you have new eyes. And that's all that it's about. So I would start by challenging you to think about how you can reframe your own thinking. We're all trying to sell a product. And when I say product, that could be a product, service, event, subscription. So product in a very, very generic way, not a tangible thing necessarily. How do you reframe your own thinking from, I got something I want to sell, to I want to meet some higher order need that people have? And we'll talk about that, because even in your own day-to-day buying habits as consumers, and I'll bring out some really basic examples to make the point, you're trying to solve you're after something functional, but you're almost always also trying to solve some emotional need as well. So how do we shift our thinking to understand the emotional needs that people have too? How do we shift from a traditional world of subscribers and advertisers to thinking about, irrespective of what I'm offering, there are users, there are buyers, and there are payers. And we'll go through examples of what that means. And I think hopefully you'll start to see how powerful that can be in helping you think differently and more creatively about your business model. And finally, how do you break away from a traditional world where there may have been subscribers on one side and advertisers on the other, and you're kind of in the middle controlling things, to being more of a facilitator of a more complex group of people who are participating in your business model? Okay? So those are 3 reframing challenges for all of you. So let's talk about a couple of assumptions. First of all, I said my assumption is when a customer for any product, anything, any service, usually seeking some basic functionality, usually trying to either accomplish something or solve a problem, and trying to meet some higher order emotional need. So think about something, think about a can of soup, right? So a can of soup, what's the basic functionality? You know, you don't want to poison your kids, right? You want something that's going to be healthy, it's not going to make you sick, it's clean, right, et cetera. Think about what's a higher order problem. You need a quick dinner, right? So time saving. Think about what could the emotional need be around a can of soup when a mom's buying a can of soup. Family harmony. You don't want fighting at the dinner table, right? So even something as basic and ridiculous as a can of soup, there's 3 levels of need that people are really solving for when they make those choices. And there was a social psychologist in the beginning of the 20th century named Milton Rocaille, and he actually did some research, and he demonstrated that all of the emotional values that people have can actually be boiled down to a really short list. And this is almost all of the list. And people choose these values when they are looking at the attributes of different products and services. So in other words, if somebody, even in the business context, somebody's making a decision to buy something, they are achieving they are trying to achieve one of these benefits. Yep. So let's go to the next slide and we'll play this out. Oh, I'm sorry. I was confused.
Well, I think this may be off sync with.
This is the PowerPoint. Yeah, okay. So now you're on the, okay. Yeah. So here's the list. So that people are solving for one of these issues at a higher level, no matter what their buying decision is. So you think about the event example. You know, Josh was just talking about events. Why is somebody going to an event? You know, well, they may want to network. They may want to learn something basic, but they also may want to look smart. You know, they may need some validation of something that they know. So people are operating at multiple levels, okay? The other thing is that I talked before about reframing. Your thinking about subscribers and advertisers is you want to think about what are the different roles that people play in making spending choices. And we'll go to an example very quickly so you can see that, and that's Netflix. So let's think about, I think about Netflix in my family. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are out of the house. 1 of them is still in the house. All my kids use Netflix, right? For my older 2 kids, they are the users and the buyers. They decide, my son's out in California. He decides he wants to, you know, watch a movie one afternoon. He's watching it. He's buying it. Guess who's paying for it? It's on my credit card. So we're both playing a role in that decision-making process because I let him put the original subscription on a credit card. Back at home, I have a young child at home. She may be the user. The buyer's my babysitter. I'm still the payer. Now, the user, buyer, payer can be the same person. You know, I could decide on a Saturday night I want to see a movie and go rent from Netflix. But sometimes they're not the same, and understanding those differences can really help you think clearly about formulating your value, you know, your offer, and who it is you really want to go after. You know, you're selling advertising in a larger size company. You know, I ran marketing departments, so I was a very, very big media buyer for a long time. The users were the folks on my team who were coming to me and making media recommendations. I may have been the buyer, but the last couple of years, as expenses got tighter, the CFO was the payer. So the dynamic around how these decisions are made work differently, and the same principles apply on the consumer side and also on the business side. Make sense? Okay. All right. So this is a template that you can use to really start mapping out how do the users, buyers, and payers look at the market, and what are they really trying to achieve. So you go back to the Netflix example. What are some of the attributes of Netflix that might be important? Anybody here a Netflix user?
Yes.
Watching? Okay, so what's an attribute or a feature of Netflix?
Quality, well, getting to see quality television.
Okay, big selection, quality. Mm-hmm.
Customized selection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You can customize it. Mm-hmm.
Instant access.
Okay, you get instant access. Okay, you've got the idea. So lots of features. So here, you know, content streaming, large selection, multi-device access fee, right? So those are all features. Now, so those are all the must-haves for Netflix, right? If that stuff didn't exist, people probably wouldn't be too interested in Netflix. So then you go to the next level and say, okay, what are the benefits that users, buyers, and payers are seeking? Okay, so what might some of those be for Netflix? Well, let me push the... Everything I want to watch, fair price, no extra bills to pay, no penalties. the big benefit that got Reed Hastings' movies on Netflix were the penalty fees. Right, so that was a big benefit, that people were irritated by the penalty fees, and he decided to overcome that. Content I can't get anyplace else. When I want to watch it, complete control. So those are real benefits that people see in that service. And then finally, what might some of the emotional benefits be? Right, so you can see, going back to Keok's list, family life, excitement, harmony, peace in the household, control. I'm controlling what I want to watch. I don't have to turn on the TV. So those are the emotional values. And tuning into those with the people that you're doing business with can really help you differentiate and cut to the chase of what matters. And I would argue it doesn't depend on doing big fancy market research studies. It depends on just being a little bit of an observer and actively listening to people and understanding what's the problem they're really trying to solve beyond the basic feature functionality that you're providing them. And thinking about local news, just as a homeowner in Short Hills, there's a lot of emotional value. I subscribe to the Item. I just look at the paper in my driveway every week. I care a lot about my community. I'm very vested in the community. There's a lot of emotional reasons why I pay for the Item and read it every week. It's not, I want to know what's going on. Yeah, I want to know when traffic is going to be blocked, but I really care about my community. I have a big financial investment there, and it matters to me. So you think about, for the businesses that you're in, there are needs at all three levels. And the more you understand them, the more differentiated and the more compelling you can be. And it's a matter of training yourself to be an active listener and observer, because people won't tell you what they need. Everybody likes to talk about Apple and the iPad. Nobody could have told Steve Jobs they had to have an iPad, right? How did he figure out? Observation of behavior and really actively listening and observing what was going on for people, and really focusing on the experience that people having with technology and realizing that a delightful experience was something people would really grab onto. But people cannot tell you. You have to observe and listen.
And sometimes create. I mean, didn't Steve Jobs create the need that wasn't there? I mean, the iPhone, the iPad,
yeah.
and technology in general, and gadgetry in general has created a level of magic that, we could have guessed at in the 70s.
He saw the value of what a friend of mine calls the automagical experience.
Right.
That you could really delight people beyond a level of what in the old days a laptop could do. So it's very, very interesting. So this is one framework, just being able to understand for your audience. And you obviously, I mean, everybody can get copies, it's no problem. But you take a blank and you say, okay, for the people I'm trying to serve, what's their basic level of functionality? What are the benefits they're seeking? And what might the emotional values? And for the emotional values, just go back to the list. And then you listen and observe and see, what are people struggling with? What are they talking about? What's bugging them? And you can start to latch on to what that is. So that's one framework to understand users, buyers, and payers, and understand all of their needs. So now we'll go to the value constellation itself. And I already talked a little bit about this, kind of the old days when life was easy. They're very, very simple value chains. And this was really what existed in a lot of industries. There were people who made stuff in the middle, and then there were people they sold to and people who they got the supplies from on the other side. And obviously that's the world that a lot of us grew up in. Life was easier. It's just not like that anymore. And really technology has pushed this just reinvention of how value happens and how business models happen. And I think a great way to illustrate that is in this notion of the value constellation, where instead of just a linear relationship between your audiences and your advertisers with you in the middle, that now there's this notion of, and I hate this word, ecosystem. It's real consultant jargon. But there's a constellation or an ecosystem of a lot of players. And I think, certainly the things that, at the last presentation Josh was talking about suggests that there are new nodes that can be created. There's also multiple users, buyers, and payers. And the more you understand that, the more you can really drive new sources of revenue and also create flexibility for yourself and where your money is coming from, open up new doors. But you have to understand it's very dynamic. It's not linear. Data, obviously, is a really important currency. I don't know if today you talked about the role of data. Digital is certainly really, really critical, but data is a huge currency, and it drives a lot of the power of this. And everybody in the constellation can affect how you develop your products and services. And you can take advantage of what you're telling them by listening to them. So one media company, yeah.
The data. I just want, could you just, data is currency, not just money. What do you mean?
Aha, let me illustrate that too, because we're going to get to a real example, and I'll talk to you about that a lot. And since I basically grew up professionally in a data business, the credit card industry, I could talk a lot about data as currency. Even long before there was an internet, data was a currency. It's just become much more powerful now, and digital companies are using data in really important ways to attract advertisers, to customize for subscribers. I mean, it plays a role in everything that's going on online, in the online world today. So one company I love to look at is the weather company. I have a long acquaintanceship with their current CEO, Dave Kenny, who's someone I really admire, but also I think they're a terrific example of a media company that not so long ago was a pretty traditional, not going anyplace special provider of weather to TV stations, and really took a big step back and looked at their business model and said, how do we really reposition ourselves in the market and grow multiple new revenue streams to take advantage of digital technology? So a much bigger company, certainly not on the order of what you're doing, but a company I always like to extract lessons from other businesses, and I think there are lessons that you can learn. They're a very inspiring example. So they move from very traditional media value chain, creating weather, attracting users, and selling the weather content mostly to cable stations, to stepping back and saying, we're going to be all about where the world gets the weather. So we're going to take a much bigger position in the market. They rebranded to reflect that, and they strongly diversified all of their sources of revenue. So where they were not so many years ago was basically TV, United States, ad sales, and advertising. And they've expanded their business model dramatically in the last 5 or 6 years to TV plus digital, US plus international, ad sales plus fees and subscriptions, advertisers plus intelligence buyers, people who are willing to come to them because of the data that they control. And you think about the role that weather, it's the ultimate sticky topic. The role that weather is playing all of our lives. They're on a very, very compelling set of data that they monetize very, very dramatically beyond their content. So if you look at the Value Constellation, so I created this. And one thing I'd also suggest, you get a lot of information and learn a lot about what other companies are doing by going to their sitemap and their newsroom. So the next couple of slides, although I know folks at the weather company, I went to their sitemap and said, OK, let me understand what are all the businesses they're in. It's all in the sitemap. And then you go in the newsroom and you say, let me just find the most recent release that talks about earnings and strategy. And it's amazing what people will disclose in their press releases. So I always like to look at those. But so they have, this is just illustrative. This is not everything in their Value Constellation. But they are focusing on their top users, who they call weather enthusiasts, local TV stations, cable satellite, lots of sectors that value the data. Think about the importance of the data they have to airlines, energy traders, insurance companies. The list can be very long. Advertisers on the Weather Channel and on their site, and then the government. Imagine weather plays a role in national security.
But the government is actually providing the data to the weather company.
No, the weather company actually has a team of 250 meteorologists based at a science center in Massachusetts. And they're doing their own research and data gathering and interpretation, calling of hurricanes. They're actually developing, that's proprietary intelligence. That's pretty much their secret sauce. So what's happening here in the value exchange? Let me just put this all up. I think it'll be easier. And then hopefully I'll hit your question about data. So, there's one more. Oops, sorry. So the weather enthusiasts, so there's an exchange of value between each user, buyer, or payer and the weather company. Weather enthusiasts are getting advice and near real-time forecasts. They're giving the weather company their data. So you may think, well, they're not paying, but there actually is. When I talk about data as a currency, they are powering the kinds of data that they're giving. When I tell the weather company that I want the weather in zip code 07078, right? they think about how they can leverage that data for advertisers. Or I go in and type, I want to know the weather in Barcelona, and I'm going on a trip. So think about how that affects travel providers. So they use that data, and basically this relationship is creating a lot of the value in the other relationships. It's very interesting. Local TV stations are paying fees for scientifically backed content, right? Local TV stations may be benefiting from cross-channel viewers. So people are going on the site, they're going on TV, they're seeing consistent branding. One hand is probably washing the other and increasing the value of each of these sources, each of these channels. Cable and satellite distributors are paying per home fees. Airlines, clearly, there's huge potential here, subscriptions and ad hoc consulting fees to help these sectors understand what's going on with the weather. Advertisers, obviously, that media buys, very, very diverse and differentiating ad and promotional units, and you start to think about the potential for location-based targeting. And then the government, as I said, weather plays a huge role in national security and in all kinds of other issues. That would be an extreme, affecting the government, the government is interested in. So they have gone from being, I don't say in the last 5 and 10 years, to being largely about this and this, right? And this, to doing a very dramatic expansion and really reframing what's the business that we're in and how can we use data differently to create new revenue streams. And you can see where the more of this you do, the more you can create a defensible position. That gives you a competitive advantage. So I think it's a great case study of a traditional media company really transforming itself in a highly strategic way around this notion of the value constellation. They didn't get there overnight. You look at this and go like, oh my God, how could I ever do anything approaching that even on the scale of my business? You take on a piece at a time. I think the event example is a great example of how do you create one more node and how do you take that someplace else? And I think a lot of the conversation here could readily translate into, gee, how is this a starting point for me to build out a more robust constellation and get out of the business of just being a supplier?
I think the marketing services piece is another one that people talked about.
Yes.
Helping local businesses be better digital marketers on their own as well.
Yes. And I think you all talked about a lot of the opportunities around, how do you partner? I love the marketing idea of packaging, the whole week's worth of conferences. There are a lot of ways to think about value creation. So if you put this notion together with the idea of who are the potential users, buyers, and payers, you can start to have the basis for really thinking a little more strategically about, okay, if that's where I'm trying to go, how am I going to get there? And how do I reframe my thinking and open up some new doors? That'll force me out of the traditional way of looking at things. And that's really all this is about. So, so just to summarize, and we can certainly take questions and talk a little bit, is that, understanding people in their roles as users, buyers, and payers. All customers are not the same, and not all customers want the same thing, and people wear different hats in the buying process. The fact that you as, particularly yourselves as the producers, users, buyers, and payers come together to create value in these value constellations. The idea of a value chain, life was simple. We all know, not really there anymore. We have to think differently. If you start to build out, multiple revenue streams, obviously you have a much stronger business model, probably much more realistic and practical. Getting to people's emotional needs, which really is a matter of listening and observing, will also strengthen the quality and durability of your offers. And I think there are new ways to create value beyond moving a traditional media model online. So that's really it. My last point is, I feel a little bit like this every day, the woman with her hands over her face. I'm sure you feel that way too. I think keep in mind the people who you're trying to sell to and draw into your value proposition probably feel the same way. Everybody is totally overwhelmed. And if you could be a little bit the field anthropologist and just actively listen and observe, what are people up to? What problems are they really trying to solve? You can hone in on things that are really, really ownable. So you wear that hat and become an active observer. It's a big tool that can really empower you to be more effective. So I know this is probably, at the end of a long day, a real drink from a fire hose. I'm very available on LinkedIn. if you have questions, you can certainly shoot them to me, and happy to clarify, in any way. So hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah.